This isn't a damn hotel, Rachel. Lock it down and go home. Frank's voice echoed through the empty hallway of the small-town shelter, brittle with exhaustion. He slammed the file cabinet shut and didn't wait for a response as he marched toward out the front door, letting it slam behind him. Rachel stood frozen for a moment, her fingers still hovering over the light switch. She had been about to close for the night when she'd heard the sound barely more than a shuffle, a breath, like a shadow remembering how to exist. She didn't respond to Frank. He wouldn't have listened anyway. The shelter was cold, the kind of late fall chill that settled in the bones, and the lights buzzed faintly overhead. Rachel walked slowly toward the back kennels, heart tight, senses sharp. It wasn't the dogs, most were asleep. A few perked up their heads as she passed. It was something else, something human. She stopped short when she saw her, a little girl, maybe 7, curled into the corner of kennel 6, curled so small it took Rachel a full breath to believe she was real. Her face was hidden behind her knees, but her socks were soaked, and her coat was 2 sizes too thin. One shoe was missing, and beside her, sitting completely still with unblinking eyes, was Titan, the German shepherd no one could touch. He didn't bark, he didn't growl. He just sat, like a sentinel carved from bone and shadow, his head tilted slightly, his body positioned between the girl and the door. Rachel's breath caught. "Hey," she said softly, taking one step forward. The girl flinched, but Titan didn't move. His ears twitched, but his gaze stayed steady, not aggressive, protective. Rachel crouched slowly, careful not to get too close. "Sweetheart, it's okay. You're safe now." The girl didn't respond. She only gripped her knees tighter. Her body was shaking, but her eyes, when she finally looked up, held something fierce. Not fear, something older. Like she'd seen too much and didn't trust even kindness anymore. Rachel glanced at Titan again. He looked back at her, and for a moment she swore she saw something in his eyes, something she hadn't seen since they brought him in 3 months ago after the fire. Something like purpose. Rachel tried again. "Are you hurt?" The girl's lips parted, but no sound came out. She looked at Titan, then leaned into him like he was the only anchor keeping her from drifting away. He shifted, pressing his nose gently against her forehead. Rachel swallowed the lump rising in her throat. She stepped back and whispered, "Okay, you can stay. Just for tonight." She left the kennel unlocked, set a blanket just outside the bars, left a sandwich and juice on the floor, untouched but within reach. Titan didn't move the entire time, laid it long after the lights were off and the silence returned. Rachel checked the monitor. The little girl was asleep, curled into the curve of Titan's body like they had always belonged to each other, and Titan, whose trust no human had ever earned, watched the door, eyes steady, as if daring the world to come close again. The sun hadn't yet touched the edge of the trees when Rachel unlocked the shelter the next morning, her stomach in knots, and fingers ice cold despite her gloves. All night she'd stared at the security feed on her phone, watching that girl, no name, no sound, sleeping in the kennel like it was the only home she'd ever known. And Titan, the dog who had snarled at every hand that reached for him, had not moved. Not once. Rachel pushed open the back door and stepped into the hallway, her heart racing as she neared kennel 6. She expected panic. Maybe even the girl gone, slipped out before sunrise like a ghost who hadn't meant to be seen. But what she found instead stopped her cold. The girl was awake, sitting cross-legged now, Titan's massive head resting in her lap. Her tiny hand moved rhythmically through the fur on his neck. She looked up as Rachel approached, her eyes wary but no longer empty. Rachel crouched outside the bars. "Hi, I'm Rachel. Do you have a name?" The girl didn't speak, just nodded slowly. Then, after a moment, she whispered, "Maddie." Rachel smiled gently. "That's a beautiful name. Are you hungry, Maddie?" She hesitated, then gave the faintest nod again. Rachel stood and left, returning a minute later with a bowl of oatmeal and a banana. She placed it on the floor near the kennel door, then stepped back. Maddie glanced at Titan, as if asking for permission. He didn't move, but something in his stillness gave her confidence. She crawled to the bowl, picked it up and began eating in slow, careful bites. Rachel sat cross-legged just a few feet away. "You don't have to tell me anything, but I want you to know you're not in trouble. You're safe here." Maddie didn't answer, but she didn't turn away either. She kept eating, her eyes flicking between Rachel and Titan like she was watching the world rebuild in front of her. It wasn't until hours later, when Rachel had returned with a clean blanket and a stuffed animal from the donation bin, that Maddie finally spoke again. Her voice was so soft, Rachel almost missed it. "They left me." Rachel paused, kneeling slowly. "Who did, sweetheart?" "My mom. Her boyfriend. We were living in the car, but it broke." And then she said I'd slow them down. Maddie's chin trembled, but she bit down hard and blinked fast, like crying would cost her something she couldn't afford to lose. Rachel's chest ached. "You're not a burden, Maddie. You're not a mistake. You're brave. And you deserve better than what they gave you." Maddie looked down. "I saw the dogs here a few times. When I walked past, I thought maybe they wouldn't mind me staying." Rachel reached her hand toward the bars, palm up. "They didn't mind at all, especially him." Titan finally stirred then, standing slowly and stepping toward the gate. He looked at Rachel, his eyes no longer guarded, but calm. resigned, like he had made his choice. He pressed his head lightly into the bars near her hand. Rachel exhaled slowly. This dog, so deeply wounded, so unreachable, hadn't just protected a child. He had accepted her, chosen her. Later that day, the local police were called not to arrest but to report. Rachel explained the situation with care, keeping Maddie in a separate room with Titan by her side. An officer named Lewis, soft-spoken and clearly moved, made a few calls. There were no missing persons reports for Maddie, no family searching, no shelter record. She was invisible. That night, after everyone had left and the building was locked up again, Rachel sat in the break room nursing a cup of tea she didn't really want. Maddie sat on the floor beside Titan, head resting against his side, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Rachel watched the pair for a long while before speaking. I don't think he's ever let anyone near him like that. Not since he came here. Maddie's eyes stayed on the dog. He's not scared of me. I think we're the same kind of lost. Rachel blinked back tears. She realized in that moment that Titan hadn't just saved the girl. Maddie had saved him too. Two souls abandoned by the world, finding safety in each other's silence. She turned off the lights, letting the soft hum of the heater fill the room, and in the quiet dark where trust had begun in the unlikeliest of places, a little girl and a broken dog slept side by side, no longer alone. The next morning began with a soft rustle of blankets and the sound of Titan's low, steady breathing. Rachel entered quietly, unsure what she would find, but not surprised when she saw Maddie curled beneath the donated quilt, one hand resting protectively on Titan's chest. He lay still, his eyes blinking slowly as he watched Rachel approach. Maddie opened her eyes a moment later and sat up, blinking against the sunlight that poured in through the slats of the window. There was something new in her expression, still cautious, still wary, but no longer hollow. Rachel crouched down beside her. Did you sleep okay? Maddie nodded, brushing hair from her eyes. Better than I have in a long time. Rachel hesitated before asking, would you be okay with talking to someone, not the police, just someone who can help make sure you're safe? Maddie glanced at Titan, then looked back at Rachel. Only if Titan stays with me. Rachel's heart clenched. We'll figure it out. She made another call to Officer Lewis by late morning. A social worker named Dana arrived, a woman with kind eyes, a soft voice, and no clipboard. She didn't ask Maddie a single question for the first 10 minutes. Instead, she sat beside her on the floor and talked about dogs. Her own German Shepherd, Max, how he used to steal socks and bury them in the backyard. Maddie laughed a small, surprised sound, and Titan's ears perked at the change in tone. But then Dana gently steered the conversation. Where had Maddie come from? How long had she been alone? And most importantly, did she have anyone else? Maddie answered in pieces. Her mother's name was Tessa. The man she called him was not her father. They had been living in the back of a car for months, hopping parking lots, avoiding questions. One night, after an argument, Tessa had told Maddie to wait near a gas station. She never came back. Maddie had wandered for nearly 2 days before ending up at the shelter. Rachel stood just outside the door, her fingers clenched into her sweater. She didn't want to hear it, didn't want to imagine what this little girl had endured, what kind of nights she had survived without food, without warmth, without the sound of a single loving voice. Titan had pressed himself against her during the entire conversation, as if sensing every painful memory as it surfaced. He never moved, never looked away. He was her armor. When Dana finally stood, she looked at Rachel with something unreadable in her face. She needs a place, a safe one, and soon. Rachel nodded. Can she stay here for now, just a little longer? Dana hesitated. It's not standard, but it's clear she's safer here than anywhere else at the moment. Rachel exhaled, in relief. But just as Dana turned to leave, Maddie spoke. Are they going to take Titan away from me? The question was sharp, cutting the room in half. Rachel stepped forward, kneeling beside her. We'll fight for him to stay with you, I promise. Maddie's voice cracked. I don't want a new family if they don't want him to. Dana paused in the doorway. She had seen a lot in her years on the job: trauma, neglect, survival. But never had she seen a child draw a line so clearly in the sand. This wasn't a plea, it was her only condition. That night, Rachel stayed later than usual. She didn't tell Frank, didn't need his cynical take on what she already knew was becoming true. She was too deep in this now. She couldn't walk away. She brought Maddie hot soup, and the girl insisted on sharing it with Titan, sneaking bits of chicken into his bowl when she thought Rachel wasn't watching. After dinner, they sat in the office with the old radio humming. Softly in the background, Maddie lay against Titan's side, humming along to a song she half remembered from somewhere. Rachel sat beside them, and for a moment, the world outside didn't exist. No courts, no broken systems, no abandonment. Just a girl, a dog, and a second chance neither of them had asked for, but both had needed more than anything. And in that fragile quiet, Rachel made a silent promise. She would not let the world forget this child again, and she would not let Titan go back to a cage. Some bonds, once forged in survival, are too sacred to break. The next few days unfolded with the quiet, cautious rhythm of people learning how to breathe again. Maddie never strayed far from Titan, and Titan, whose history had been written in distrust and trembling snarls, never left her side. Rachel kept her distance at first, letting their bond speak louder than any reassurances she could offer. But she watched. She noticed the way Maddie began to hum softly while cleaning Titan's ears, the way Titan would lie between her and the shelter door, even during nap time, as if shielding her from the world beyond it. Dana visited every afternoon, bringing paperwork, options, and too many forms that tried to shrink Maddie's life into boxes and signatures. Each time adoption or foster care was mentioned, Maddie's body stiffened. Her first question was always the same: will they let me keep Titan? No one ever answered right away. Not because they didn't care, but because they weren't sure. Titan had been marked as unadoptable, dangerous, unpredictable, not suited for families. But the Titan they all knew now, the one curled around a child each night like she was a part of him, was not the same dog who'd arrived 3 months ago with fire burns on his paws and a frozen, haunted stare. Rachel made it her mission to rewrite that label. She called in a trainer, a behaviorist, even an animal advocate who'd once testified in court for cases like his. They evaluated Titan over 3 days, watching how he responded to strangers, to loud noises, to the chaos that came with shelter life. Every time, his body tense, but every time, he looked to Maddie first. And if she was calm, so was he. His fear isn't aggression, the trainer had told Rachel. It's trauma. He's protective, but he's stable when she's nearby. Their bond has literally reshaped his responses. I've never seen anything like it. Still, when the call came from child services at the end of the week, Rachel's stomach dropped. Dana stepped into the shelter with her usual warmth, but her face carried the weight of something heavier. There's a couple, she began gently, after pulling Rachel aside. Licensed, stable, open to adopting older children. They saw the report on Maddie. They're willing to meet her. But they don't want a dog. Rachel blinked. They don't want a dog. Dana nodded. They said they'd let her visit him, donate to the shelter. But they want to give her a fresh start. Rachel's voice tightened. You can't ask her to choose. I'm not, Dana said softly, but someone else will, and soon. That evening, Rachel didn't say anything to Maddie about the visit. Instead, she sat on the floor beside her, brushing through Titan's coat while Maddie told a story about a made-up kingdom where dogs ran the world and humans had to earn their trust. Titan lay with his head on her knee, eyes closed, utterly still. Maddie, Rachel said carefully, if someone wanted to talk to you about living with a new family, what would you say? Maddie didn't answer right away. She looked down at Titan, resting her hand between his ears. I'd ask them what Titan's favorite toy is, she whispered. If they don't know, they don't get me either. Rachel didn't argue. She didn't try to soften the truth. She just nodded and let the silence settle. But that night, after Maddie had fallen asleep and Titan had taken his place between her and the door once again, Rachel made a decision she had been circling for days. She stepped into her office, picked up the phone, and dialed Dana's number. I want to apply for emergency foster placement, she said, for both of them. Together there was a pause on the line. Rachel, you live in a shelter. You run it. You work late. You're not. I know, she interrupted, but I am what they need right now. They already feel safe here. They already belong to each other. Let me be the one who belongs to them. Dana's voice softened. It's not going to be easy. The system isn't built for this kind of exception. Then let's break it, Rachel said. Because if we don't fight for these two, then we're not saving lives, we're just rearranging their grief. In the next room, under the glow of the security monitor, Titan stirred slightly as Maddie shifted in her sleep, curling closer, and for the first time in years, Rachel looked at the stillness not as a burden, but as a beginning. The papers were approved just after sunrise on a quiet Monday. Rachel had barely slept, her nerves humming with a strange mix of fear and purpose. The emergency foster placement was only temporary, a threadbare bridge in a system filled with red tape and hard decisions, but it was enough. It meant Maddie and Titan would stay together. It meant no one would force that little girl to say goodbye to the only soul who had made her feel whole again. And for Rachel, it meant stepping into a life she hadn't expected but suddenly couldn't imagine not choosing. Maddie was sitting by the window when Rachel told her. The morning light framed her face, still so young but already carrying the wear of too many sleepless nights. Titan rested at her feet, head on his paws, eyes half closed but still alert, in that way only dogs who have known loss can be. You're not going anywhere, Rachel said gently. You and Titan, this is your home now, for as long as you want it to be. Maddie turned slowly, as if unsure she'd heard right. Her eyes searched Rachel's face for the lie, the condition, the catch, but there wasn't one. And when she realized that, she stood up, walked over without a word, and wrapped her arms tightly around Rachel's waist. It was the first time she had initiated touch, the first time she had let herself fall into someone else's arms and believed they might not disappear. Rachel held her close, one hand resting on the back of her head, heart aching and full at the same time. Titan got up too and sat beside them, pressing his body into Rachel's leg like he understood the promise that had just been made. The following weeks passed in a blur of cautious routines and quiet victories. Maddie learned how to cook scrambled eggs without burning them. Rachel learned that Maddie only slept through the night if Titan was on the bed with her. Titan, in turn, learned to trust the world just a little more each day. He began greeting Rachel at the door when she came home from the grocery store. He stopped flinching when new volunteers came into the shelter. And once, when Maddie left her stuffed bear behind on the porch, Titan carried it inside carefully, laying it beside her pillow like it was treasure. People in town began to notice. Some whispered that Rachel was taking on too much, that the shelter wasn't meant to be a home. But others showed up with casseroles and warm jackets and children's books. A local vet offered free checkups for Titan. The woman who ran the corner bakery gave Maddie her own apron and let her help glaze cookies on weekends. Slowly, the town stopped seeing a broken girl and a dangerous dog. They began seeing something else, something harder to define but impossible to ignore. Love born from survival, healing shaped by companionship, a family that didn't look like the others, but stood just as strong. Months later, on the morning of Maddie's 8th birthday, Rachel found her sitting in the same kennel where they had first met. Titan sat beside her, older now, his eyes a little softer. In Maddie's lap was a drum, smudged, edges bent. It was of the three of them, Maddie, Titan, and Rachel, all standing under the sun with a little heart drawn above their heads. In the corner, in shaky handwriting, were the words, "Home isn't a house, it's who holds you when you're scared." Rachel knelt down beside her, arms around both of them. "You ready to blow out your candles?" she asked, her voice thick. Maddie nodded. "Can I make 2 wishes?" "You can make as many as you want." Maddie looked up. "I already got my first one." Rachel smiled. "What's the second?" Maddie leaned her head against Titan and whispered that he never has to be scared again. And in that moment, Rachel understood something deeper than all the paperwork, deeper than any plan she had made. The child she had once found hiding in the dark had not just survived. She had become someone who wished peace for someone else first. Someone who had found safety, not in being rescued, but in choosing to stay. Titan looked up at her, that same calm, soulful gaze he had given her the night they met. And Rachel knew without doubt that he wasn't guarding the girl anymore. Now, she was guarding him, too.